Hello, and thank you for joining us, everyone. We're going to have a few minutes here of intro from me while we have a few more attendees joining. You guys are right on time. It's exactly at 12 o'clock. We've got the amazing Molly with us today, Molly Carroll. We're so excited to hear from her. And I just wanted to let you all know first that so the expert series that we've been doing is sponsored by Ben Broadband. And I know you've heard that a couple times now, but we're thankful for their sponsorship. And they actually are giving away a $100 gift card to Noi Thai. So today we'll throw that in the chat in a little bit, but it will also come in an email at the end afterwards with all of our info from Molly. So you'll be able to sign up for that and to get some more information. Okay, so thank you for being here with us on a Wednesday. We're halfway through the week, and I'm just going to start talking a little bit about our speaker today. She is going to teach us a lot of great stuff about our fight or flight, and it's going to get pretty specific, I think, with cognitive, how things work in our brains, and I'm really excited to learn about it today from Molly. So Molly Carroll, she's a therapist who holds a master's degree in counseling psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute in Santa Barbara, California. She is a coach, a published writer, and a loving mom of 2 kids. I think she's going to talk about her kids today too, so it's going to be fun. Molly has been passionately working in education and mental health for 25 years. And she actually has 2 books out right now. And again, we'll send these out at the end and she might mention them. But they're called Cracking Open is one of them, and Trust Within. And she wanted to make sure that we mentioned that you can get them locally. So I know all of you, if you feel the same way as I do, local bookstores here in Bend are so great to support them, especially during these times right now. And you can find her books at Roundabout Books, actually. Cassie's the owner over there. So if you're interested in that, but we will send this out in the after email. I've got Maddie here posting some links for you as well in the chat. So thanks again for being here. We're only a couple minutes in. There'll probably be a few more people joining us, but I think we're going to pass it over to Molly now.
Great. Hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here with you today. I'm going to get ready to share my screen so that I'm with you all. I was so honored to be asked to speak to you today and to learn more about the chamber and through Addie and what you're all doing and how wonderful you're making Bend. And I feel very lucky to live here. I've lived here for quite some time. This time around, I've lived here 14 years, but I lived here before from 1995 to 1997 when there were about 25,000 people. And so I've gotten to, my heart just couldn't leave Bend. So I'm very honored to be here and to have this time with you to talk about, I know it's going to be about stress and neurobiology, neuropsychology, and self-care, but really what I want to begin by sharing with you is to open yourself up to an experience today. I know you've had quite a few speakers and you're probably coming in, this is your lunch hour, you've been in meetings, you've been reading emails, you've been maybe even, if you have children, you've been homeschooling, maybe even doing laundry. So it's a very interesting time in our history right now. And so what I would like for you to do is to find a way to stop and just kind of slow down for the next hour and to receive some information that may help you live a healthier life, receive some information that will honor your process of putting yourself first and how that can help not only yourself, but everyone around you, and to learn some stuff about your brain and your body, both from a mental, physical, and spiritual space that will help you hopefully have some healthier habits, make decisions better, and live a better life. So that's kind of how I always like to begin. It's like an invitation to say, can this next hour, can I open myself up and maybe learn something I didn't know before? I think that's always really important. I always want to begin with a funny meme. There's been so many around. I don't know if you've seen this one, but this one makes me laugh so hard because laughter is huge right now. It's like the neighbor's daughter's senior picture turned out nice, covered in head to toe alone in a field of flowers, right? I mean, this is how a lot of us are probably feeling right now. Like our fight or flight responses, which I'm going to talk a lot about today, are way up. We're wearing our gloves, our masks, we have our hand sanitizer, our soaps. We're alone more in our homes. So anyway, laughter is huge. If you could laugh once a day, science tells us that you'll have more an optimistic view about life than pessimistic if you laugh once a day. So try to find that way, even if it's 10:30 at night before you're falling asleep. Try to think about a joke or pull up a meme. So I always like to start that way. The other piece around self-care and fight or flight response that I think is pivotal for your mental health is solitude and stillness. Some people like to call it meditation. Other people like to call it focused attention. I just call it taking care of yourself. I'm not going to go into the science of this right now, but just trust me that we now know through brain scans and MRIs that allowing yourself space to be quiet and letting the thoughts settle and the mind clear makes the whole system of yourself much calmer. So we're just going to take 1 minute to just slow down, to take a deep breath in, to close our eyes. You can ground your feet. You can deep breath in. Some people say breathe in 4 breaths, hold for 7, let go for 9. Allow yourself just this time, almost like a shower, to let go of anything you're holding on to that isn't serving you. Fears or worries, obligations, to-do lists, shoulds and coulds. Just let it all melt away and let the heart open to an experience. Okay. Beautiful. And coming back, there'll be a lot of information I'll share with you, but here's one. I hope you have a pen and paper, because we now know that if you write something down, it's 47% chance more likely to happen. So write down, one of the first things you can remember is notice the difference in your body right now. Is your brain lighter? Do your muscles feel looser? Is your heart more open? How powerful would it be to enter into life, a conversation, a meeting, even a confrontation from this space? Okay. So one thing, if you walk away from it today around fight or flight and self-care, and I don't always use the word stress. I use it more just life. I mean, life is just life. You're going to have incidences throughout your day that are going to cause different emotional reactions. So noticing that stillness and solitude will help you enter life in a better place. Okay. I want to share a little bit about who I am before we go in. I think it's important. As Addie mentioned, I did go to graduate school, but I was a teacher at first. I was an elementary school teacher for 8 years, both in Bend when Santa Barbara Prep was here, San Francisco at an all-girls private school, and I also taught in Barcelona, Spain. It was when I was in San Francisco and I was teaching all girls that I realized there was a huge gap in our education system, and it was around social emotional learning. That one of my students came in and had a conflict at recess, and I didn't have all the skills. I'm a teacher, I was getting ready for a math test. And so I knew that children and families needed some skills around their social emotional learning. So I went back to graduate school, got my master's in counseling psychology, left my teaching job, and started my first company called Flourish. It's a social emotional program in my apartment in San Francisco with 13 children. It grew to over 200 kids, a camp, employees. We then moved back to Bend, and I ran a camp here. I ran the program here, and now I've made it into an SEL curriculum that is in schools in Oregon, California, and Washington. So now it's an SEL curriculum. So if you know any schools that are interested, I'm trying to get it into Ben Lapine, fingers crossed. My kids are both students in Ben Lapine, and I love the system, but we'll see. But these are some of the kids that were in my program in Flourish. And then I also wanted to share that I am a mom and I am a dog owner, my corgi that I love. And that it's really important that I share this information with you because it's part of what's been the makeup of how I handle my life. It's so important This also led into me writing books, me becoming a therapist, me becoming a speaker for companies like LinkedIn, Delta Dental, Apple, all about learning and helping people how to handle their life on a more connected level to themselves and others. Okay. So let's hop into what we're going to focus on today. And that is going to be around self-care. I also like to call it self-worth, because I think how you take care of yourself is really how you feel about yourself. Do you feel worthy? Do you deserve to take care of yourself? So I think they're really one with the other. So I like to show this picture because I think we all have something called the emotional backpack. We are born with it. When you are born, it's very small. You know, these babies that come in a little bit more colic, a little bit more struggling, their backpack might be a little bit bigger from birth. But we all generally have a very small emotional backpack. But through our years, it's inevitable that your backpack gets bigger. Trauma, your feelings get hurt. Maybe you go through what I call the 3Ds: death, divorce, disease, you or someone else in your life. It's part of the human experience. Now, the issue isn't that we have an emotional backpack. The mental health issue is that we don't know how to empty our emotional backpack. So therefore, it gets heavier and heavier to carry. So therefore, it makes it harder for you to make healthy decisions, harder for you to be in relationship, healthy relationship with people, to interact, right? Because you have this heavy emotional backpack full of traumas and stories that we've told ourselves about ourselves, who we are, how we should be, whether that came from religion or family of origin or an experience in your education system or your life. It doesn't matter. The point is that we're not taught to get rid of that. I am going to help you today learn how to get rid of some of your baggage in your emotional backpack, and how you could do stuff every single day to lighten your load. Okay, and one of those is our fight and flight response. But before I do that, I want you to ask yourself this question and really think about it. What is in your backpack? And what do you need to do today? I would say I would actually put in every day to feel more at ease. Today, I knew I was doing you guys' call. I'm doing another call in an hour and a half. I needed to go for a run this morning. I need to get out. I needed to do some meditation. I needed to eat well. You know, I needed to check in with myself, my fears, my anxieties, coming so that I could be fully open for you. So really think about that. That's a great question to ask yourself every day, because it's going to affect the way you walk in the world. And one of those things is our fight or flight response. So I'm guessing most people on this call, I don't want to assume, know about the fight or flight response. You've heard about it. We now in the mental health world, we call it fight, flight, flee, freeze. And I also add fix, right? You want to fix someone, you want to fix something when you're in this state. It is a heightened state in your emotional nervous system of cortisol. Cortisol is rushing through your body when you're at a state of fear. And what happens? Your eyes get dilated, your pupils get bigger, you sweat, your stomach starts to hurt, your heart starts to rate. You actually have a physical reaction to something. Now, in centuries past, why do humans have a fight or flight response was to fight the saber-toothed tiger, right? You were in the jungle, you were out in fighting for something, and you needed the system that would allow your blood vessels to tighten so that if you did get bit, you wouldn't bleed as much. It allowed a surge of energy through your entire body so that you could fight the tiger. Or as we now know, we've heard these stories of like mothers lifting a car off their child. They're in fight or flight response, right? It also affects your reproductive system, your respiratory system. You breathe differently. Your whole system reacts because this cortisol is going through your nervous system. And it's in two parts of your nervous system, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. But the problem is we're not in a fight or flight response like we used to. We don't have to fight tigers. The issue is now our fight or flight response happens when we get an email that is disturbing. Someone says something in a meeting that makes us feel not important or questions our decisions. We maybe made a choice that didn't feel right and someone discovered it. or someone is annoying us, right? You're not having patience if you have children with your children or a colleague. You go into the same, your body goes into the same response, and it stays there for 90 minutes. If you don't have a way to calm, because the sympathetic nervous system, this is really important to know now, is the scale. Sympathetic nervous system is the one that puts you into fight or flight or freeze or fix or, flee. The parasympathetic nervous system is the one that brings you down to homeostasis. That's the part we're going to talk about. How do we bring ourselves down so we're not in it for 90 minutes? And then the next thing happens, 90 minutes, and the next thing happens, 90 minutes. Okay? Because what we're discovering is now this is the sort of stuff that's putting us in fight or flight. We're on a hand sanitizer. There's no toilet paper. Am I going to be able to live my life the way I want to live with COVID? Right? We're kind of in this interesting space of it right now because it's kind of lessening a little bit. But no matter what, all of that stuff is still in our emotional backpack. You still have all those memories. So your body's going into fight or flight every 90 minutes. And what doctors are seeing is that's one of the biggest reasons of why people are coming in for stress, heart attack, suicide ideation, depression, anxiety, because the cortisol, which is a toxin, is pumping through our body so much that we have no way to regulate our parasympathetic nervous system. So that is what I want to teach you today, is to take what I'm going to say in and actually have a tool to walk away with to practice this, because it's a muscle. If you think these things are just going to come in your life and you're going to get your emotional backpack living the same way you're living, it's not true. I did a talk at a company in Austin, Texas called Life Size. It's like Zoom. It's a video and audio conferencing company. 65 engineers and executives, 1 female, 64 males. And I stood up and I said, if you think your traumas are not affecting your decision-making skills, you're crazy. This is something we need to look at. And I'm very strong about this because I think it's really important on a human, ecological, environmental level, that we all need to look at our emotional backpack and how we can support ourselves and each other by lessening a little bit, right? Okay, so these are the 3 things we're going to talk about today on how to regulate your fight or flight response. Integration of the brain. Self-care is like what I said, self-worth. This is really about putting yourself first. And PAC, an acronym that I call PAC, which I'll teach you about. So let's start with the integration of the brain. So we have I'm not going to go into neuropsychology. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do study the brain. Dan Siegel is a colleague, and I have worked with him a couple of times. So he has taught me a ton on this, and I appreciate his work immensely. So we have our right and our left sides of our brain. Our left side of our brain, linear, logic, your math, your science. The right side of the brain is the emotional piece, right? How you enter into your emotions, how you enter into creativity, how you enter into your passions and your purpose, your right side of the brain. Okay, now the key to being balanced is an integration of both sides of the brain. The problem is generally we tend to waver on one side versus the other. I'm a more right side brain. I'm a therapist. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I love I love emotional states, right? But so my left side of my brain, I need to work on. I need to recognize the balance. Now the problem is if you weigh too much on the right side of the brain, you're going to have chaos. There's not going to be a lot of organization. Your boundaries may not be as strong. If you waver too much on the left side of the brain, you're going to have rigidity. You're going to get uptight. You're going to live in fear. You're going to confine yourself into rules and regulations and not live life. It's like a river. You don't want to be on the left bank or the right bank. You want to be in the river and you want to know you can go with the flow and whatever comes at you. So the first thing to know about your fight or flight response and how to regulate it is when you're in a state, you're getting flooded. And you need to listen to yourself. Is the flooding, oh my gosh, I need to fix this. Oh my gosh, my life's going to fall apart. Oh my gosh, you're flooding in the right side of the brain. If you're hearing, I need to be more structured. This person is wrong. How dare they do this? You're flooding in the left side of the brain. So you want to find a way to integrate both sides. If you're flooding on the right, stop, go organize a closet, write a to-do list. How do I solve this problem? Who should I talk to? This isn't working for me. Where is my missing piece in my work or my company or my organization? We've got marketing, we've got social media, but for some reason we don't have a lot of leadership and we don't have a lot of creativity. Okay. That's where you're going to balance out. And if you're too on the left side of the brain, blaming, shaming, fear-based, this should have happened, that should have happened. You want to get more in the emotional. What am I feeling right now? What's happening in my body? The questions of like, what's really happening to me now right now? Is it really about that someone didn't hand in this project in time, or I feel like a failure every time something doesn't come through? My perfectionism is beaming right now. Okay? That's where you sit. This is going to give your fight or flight response not as much power. Or if you go into fight or flight, you have this ability to question this and sit with yourself. And again, going back to solitude and a little bit of quiet, couple minutes can change the direction of your day. Really can. Okay, and now we're going to go into a little bit of self-care. So now that you have this integration of the brain, you may start feeling like you're actually more worthy of taking care of yourself. I'm not going to go into all the different examples of self-care because I think we know those. And you have to get to know yourself better. That's all I would say from a therapeutic perspective. Get to know yourself. What works for you may not work for everyone. And all the articles and all what the experts are saying, that may not resonate with you. Find where you feel your best, who you feel your best around. Where are you more whole? The light and the dark. You feel all accepted. This is your best place to be, right? So Oxford Dictionary defines as a practice of taking action, which I love, to preserve or improve your own health. I define it as having tools and resources to support you mentally, physically, and emotionally in order to continue to be available, or I would say to awaken and connect to others and yourself. It ultimately comes down to connection. How do you connect to yourself, therefore others better? And if something's off, you got to do some self-care, right? So we know why, but I'm going to give you some of my favorite reasons. I like practical things, even though I'm very right-brained. I do have a left side of my brain. I'm married to a scientist. I got a degree in elementary education and sociology. So I love the data to back up what I really know, my intuition. My second book, Trust Within, is about intuition. Was my deepest teacher is my intuition. So if you do 20 minutes a day, meditation, a walk, listening to a podcast, cleaning a closet could be self-care too. It feels so good. Getting rid of clutter, answering an email you've been avoiding. That's all self-care. You're worth it. You will have better health, sleep, and income. And I'm going to just say this. I don't know if this is PC or not. And you'll have better sex. So I'm going to say it there too. You will have better sex if you take better care of yourself. I promise you. So I hear you guys are on the younger side, so maybe not so much about worry. Okay, Addie's giving me the thumbs up. Good. It definitely combats depression and anxiety, which I'm so passionate about. I was in private practice for 12 years. We're at an all-time high of depression and anxiety. The hospitals during COVID are not full of sick people. They're full of people with suicide ideation. I have a nurse friend who works at Vanderbilt Children's Pediatric. It's full of children with depression and anxiety. It's so heartbreaking, okay? So this is not a joke. You will flourish rather than merely survive. You may have those days like, just get me through. I'm just doing this to get through the day. No, self-care, if you do 20 minutes that day, you'll actually flourish. You'll feel better about yourself. There's a reciprocity. You'll be kinder to other people, which always feels better. You're 3 times less likely to get sick, and you'll have such better relationships, which now we know I did. I've done 2 TED Talks, and my second TED Talk was on the power of human connection. And the studies are that if you have deep human connection, it is better for your health. You will live longer, 50% more longer. And it's more important than even obesity, smoking, or high blood pressure. If you are lonely, you are more likely to die over obesity, smoking, and high blood pressure. So self-care is massively important for relationships. Okay. And I just wanted to put this slide in here because we often think I was born Irish Catholic. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm one of 5 children. You pull up your bootstraps, you clean the table, you go to school, you do your sports, you move on. There's no time. There wasn't time, to stop. I never saw my mom get a massage or go to acupuncture or, any of those things. It's been a learned skill for me. And I forgot to mention this, at any time during this talk, please stop and put any questions in the chat, any comments in the chat. This is a more interactive, and I'm going to leave 15 minutes at the end. I don't even look at the clock, but I'll try 4 questions. But your wisdom is just as important as my teachings today. Okay. So when you know you need something, but you hear that little inner critic of a voice come in that says you don't deserve it, you don't have the money, who do you think you are? No, just tough it out. This is the voice of the ego. This is the voice that does not serve your overall mental health. And watch how long you stay in that voice and the decisions you make from that. When you are feeling exhausted and you need a break, take it. It is not an act of cowardness. You are not a coward. You are actually super courageous and a leader in helping everyone else that's around you. Think of how much better you feel after you do self-care. A yoga class, a run, going on a hike by yourself. I mean, we live in the mecca of nature. Just being silent in trees for 20 minutes, you walk back in your house a more open-hearted, stable, grounded person. Therefore, constantly keeping your fight or flight response at bay, so that cortisol isn't pumping through your brains and your body as a toxin. Okay. So the last thing I want to share with you in regards to a tool to take away on how to live a healthier life, watching the integration of your brain, balancing your right and your left side of your brain, self-care in general. And the last one is something I created called PAC. I know I always laugh at the picture of the hands shaking. When's the last time you shook someone's hand? We will one day. Don't worry. Come on. I promise you. And they're instantly, they'll put hand sanitizer the moment they take their hand away from the other person. So this comes from a lot of different teachings and readings and studies I've done from a lot of different people. But I realized I'm such a believer that we hold a lot in our body, and it's these things in the body that are inhibiting us from moving forward. In psychology, we call them triggers. You get triggered. Something happens. I'm sure you could even think of an example today. One, I'll just share personal. My daughter was supposed to clean her room. Of course, I walked up after like 3 times of asking her, and the room's still dirty. Trigger. When it's like thorns sticking out of your body. It hits something. Anger, impatience, frustration, right? All these emotions flooded through my body because my daughter's room wasn't clean, right? It's not World War III. It's her room isn't clean, but it feels like World War III. So I've created this thing called PAC. Presence, to get present, awareness, and compassion. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to look how much time we have to see if we can actually practice it. And then if we do have time, we will. And if not, I'll go through it in depth so that you will have it to practice today. I would say practice it today if you could. So the first one is present. You got to be present of how you feel. So what's going through you? I just shared with you the emotions I went through. My daughter didn't clean her room, right? But you may be in a sense of sadness, fear, anxiety, grief. Now I'm talking about the emotions. I don't like to say good or bad emotions because I don't think these emotions are bad. I think they're some of our greatest teachers. I like to say comfortable and uncomfortable emotions. So kind of like you're exercising, you're riding your mountain bike up a hill and you're uncomfortable, but when you get to the top, you actually feel a release and a strength and a courage. I feel the same way about uncomfortable emotions. You get through your anxiety, your grief, your sadness, your fear in a healthy way. Your system is so much stronger. So I want you to get present to how you're feeling with these uncomfortable emotions, and it allows them to open, and they may intensify for a minute, but I want you to stay strong. I like to use the metaphor of a child when they come up and they ask a parent or a teacher or someone for something. Can I have a glass of water? And let's see that this adult is busy and they don't ignore them. The child doesn't get softer, it gets louder. Mommy, 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 mommy. You know, Mrs. Smith, I'm asking you for a pencil. They get louder, louder, louder. This is the same concept with your emotions. If you do not listen to them and pay attention to them, they get heavier in your backpack. They get louder in your brain and your mind. They don't get quieter. That is something we now know in our studies is false. Ignoring your emotions does not help. You need to get present. Now, you don't need to give them all the attention in the world. You don't want to become a victim to them. You just want them to know that you see them. Okay, I see impatience. I see that I'm annoyed. I honored it. Now you want to go into the body. This is called, in psychology world, it's called somatics. Be aware of where it is in the body. My heart is constricting. My stomach feels like it's about to explode. It feels like a brick. Look at the color, the intensity, the denseness, the shape. Sometimes it comes in as a voice. Is it a parent's voice, a partner's voice, an old teacher, your own inner critic? You want to let the body know that you're paying attention to it. And I shared this slide with it as well, because we now know there's emotional states in the body through MRIs and EKGs. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, is one that people often like to want to come back to and they forget. Yoga teachers talk about a lot about this, like when you're in pigeon pose, you hold fear in your hips. When you're doing a back bend, you're opening up your chest and your heart, letting go of fear, your throat. Or if you're exercising, you can feel your feet on the ground. You get done from a run, you feel grounded, right? If you're feeling any of these emotions, grief, it's hard to breathe, anxiety, your heart may be racing, your belly's tightening. This is where we hold things in the body. It's really important to recognize it and give it some sense of attention, because then you're going to bring in massive amounts of compassion. Like that child that is upset. Or I often say, if you had a friend in conflict, would you just say, pull up your bootstraps, move on, don't be a, crybaby, God, life is so short, why are you spending so much energy on this? No. You would say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry you're going through this. I am here for you. I see you. I'm not going to fix you. Nobody's broken. I don't need to fix you. And you don't need to be perfect. You need to be seen. So when you bring in compassion to the fear, it may seem like a blanket or something that you wish you would have heard as a child. It may be something that you wished a parent or an adult or a mentor would have said to you, a boss, a colleague, a partner, a spouse, a sibling. You say this to yourself. You give it to yourself. This is going to help your fight or flight response. We don't need to and I'm saying this as a therapist, and I wholeheartedly believe in therapy. It's changed massive lives, saved lives, in fact. But you really have all the wisdom in you if you practice it. And then your therapist, your acupuncturist, your friends, your psychologist, whoever you have, your cycling team, whatever it is, they're your support system for you to stay grounded and healthy. But you come in putting out the fires. You come in telling yourself your deepest truth. This builds resiliency. You will be stronger to face the world. The next time you're in conflict, the next time you come up against something that's struggling, you have yourself. Next time your fight or flight response comes up, you know how to calm down the parasympathetic nervous system. You can now notice, are you flooding in the right side of the brain or the left? Okay, Molly, that's right. I remember she said, I'm going to get more rigid. I'm going to get more chaotic. I need to bring groundedness into myself. This stuff works if you practice it. Okay? So that is PAC. And we have a little bit of time. And what I'd love, I don't know, Addie, if we can do this. I don't know if there's any questions. Why don't I stop here for a minute, though, and I'm going to do Q&A at the end, too. Does anyone have any questions or comments from where we're at right now? I've given you a lot of information.
Yeah, if anyone does have a question, you guys can throw it into the chat area or in the Q&A. We can read both. This has all been really great information so far, Molly. Look, I've taken lots of notes and made a drawing of my backpack.
Yay, right?
I wanted to say too, in the very beginning, when you had us just do, a few moments of deep breathing, I know I've been told that that's so important, but I still forget to take that break in the day. And it did. You asked how it changed our bodies, and my whole alignment changed.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't like down, hunched over the computer. I felt like I was sitting squarely, and yeah, it was a really big change in just a few minutes. I don't know if anybody else felt that. But that was really helpful to me.
Yeah.
I have a question for you about practicing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you suggest that you practice do you suggest you practice when you don't have those emotions, the fight or flight?
Or when you do?
Yeah.
I would say you practice both times.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the reality is that times when you're in fight or flight, it's really hard to practice it. It just is. So I do think there's a piece that you need to practice when things are a little bit smaller. It's like the same way, like we learned to swim in the baby pool and then we moved to the bigger pool. Often our systems are just thrown into the big pool and we're having to swim. So you're only about survival. You're not about like thinking about, okay, what did Molly say? How do I integrate the brain? That's not as easy. So I really do think it's something that, like, when you got off this call before you hop into your next meeting, if you just had a couple minutes, you'd say, okay, what emotion has been challenging for me today and not very comfortable? Oh yeah, I got frustrated with my partner before I left the house, or oh my gosh, this person sent me this email and I'm really annoyed by it. And then just close your eyes, where is it in the body, and bring compassion to it. And just notice what you feel. I did this exercise with 200 administrators and superintendents in the state of Washington. It's called WASA. And one of the women, the superintendent, said, it's in my throat and it's the coronavirus. I like literally could see the virus in my throat.
Wow.
From everything I'm having to deal with between parents and students. This was like in the first couple of weeks of when we had to shut down their state and the country. So, it's not a small thing. And by her bringing compassion to it, it's got smaller.
And compassion, you mean like bringing compassion on to yourself, like, like forgiveness for those feelings, or what's a
Great
good way
question.
to say that?
Yeah, I mean, it's also around, it's around forgiveness. It's around, you'll hear it. It's like kind of this sense of like, oh my gosh, right now, this too shall pass. You'll maybe hear a voice, or you'll see a warm blanket, or you'll have someone come in and, you'll hear something say, you know what? You did the best you could. In the situation you were in, you did the best you could, right? Compassion can look like anything. It can be about forgiveness. It can be about calming your nervous system. It can be about quieting the mind, healing trauma. It does all these things. It's super powerful. So those sort of things happen as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's really helpful. We do have a couple questions that came through.
Yeah.
How do you recommend staying in between the river of the mind with the pandemic? I'm meditating every morning and night, but still feel heightened anxiety, fight or flight emotions around it.
Okay. It's a really good question because it is such an interesting time. The first thing I would say is do not read the news. Okay. If you feel the need to feel like you have to be informed, then find one news source that you trust and read it. But the moment you start to tip towards anxiety or depression, get off. Right? I would say my personal favorites are the New York Times briefing or the Washington Post, are the two that I trust the most. And maybe even Skim. Skim is a little bit of a lighter version of the news, gives you just a skim. But the power of it is you either don't do it at all, you're going to hear about it, you're going to hear what's going on, someone will come up in conversation, or you can do your own research. The second thing is, if you do want to do it and you feel the need to read every day to be informed, knowledge is power, ignorance is bliss, wherever camp you're in. Notice the moment you start to feel anxious or depressed, or get off the news. That's the first thing I would do. I would also find a way to stay in the river and integration every single day. Do something that where the mind shuts off, where you're not in the mind. So if that's exercise, whether that's like she said, or he, I don't know who put on the question, meditating. Maybe you need to meditate a little bit longer. Maybe your meditation practice needs to go a couple minutes more, or you need to maybe do it a couple times a day, right before you go to bed. The third thing is, so the first one is no news. The second one is find your tools that will calm your anxiety and your nervous system. The third one is gratitude. And I know we hear this all the time, but I have a practice that is changed my life. First of all, I want to share a study that they did at Berkeley, where they had people do gratitude journals for 3 weeks straight. What they discovered, they'd have people not do gratitude, the other half do. The half that did a gratitude journal for 3 weeks, they absolutely were more optimistic than pessimistic. They saw the world half glass full, not half glass empty for 3 weeks. That's it. So I like to share my gratitude practice because it's easy, it's foul proof, and I don't forget. Because you have to start doing these habits like brushing your teeth, drinking water every day. So I do 3 gratitudes in the morning and 3 gratitudes at night. And I do them before I get out of bed. I do not put my feet on the ground until I do my 3 gratitudes. And right before I fall asleep, I do 3 gratitudes. Because once I get up and start reading my emails, taking care of my kids, getting into my work life, it's gone. So, and I even push myself sometimes, like, yes, shelter, food. We're very lucky to live in Bend. But then I push myself even a little bit further. I'm so fortunate that I get out of this bed and I can actually run. I know people who are paralyzed. I know people who've had strokes, blah, blah. You can, so those would be my 3 suggestions for that question. If they're still staying gratitude, try to get her into gratitude, or don't read the news, and find your practices that calm your anxiety and depression.
Yeah, find the specific. I like that you said that about the self-care. There's lots of tips out there, but you have to find what works for you. You have to find what really helps you. And I think that can be hard. That question was
thing
from,
I say about self-care is don't beat yourself up if it's only one thing. If it's one thing, you like to ride your bike, you like to hike in the woods, you like to cook, that's your thing.
Right.
Do it until it stops. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That question was from Pearl, and she said those were super helpful tips. Thank you.
Oh, great. Good for her.
And then one more question. Any tips on carving out the time for the 20 minutes of self-care? So that's really leads into what we were just talking about too.
Yes. The first thing I would do is I would put it on this every single day. Get it on your phone. Put it in your calendar. And do it every day for the week. Once you get into a habit, if you do something like that Berkeley study for 3 weeks, it is more of a practice. And then you can also look at Daniel Pink's work when he's about time management. Are you a morning person? Are you a nighttime person? Are you a midday? Do it I'm a morning. I'm not a night. I would never run at night. I would never run past like noon. I mean, I'm like in my PJs by 6 or 7 and, shutting down. But I am 5:30. I write my books in the morning. I do my exercise. I'm a morning person. Right? So find your time. Okay? So I would schedule it. I'd be honest about where you're your best self. And the other tip that I often say is that we're not driving as much anymore, but we still drive. Turn off your radio, turn off your podcast, don't call a friend. Take 20 minutes in the car or 15 minutes in the car to just breathe. Notice the trees. Let anything that's weighing on your head out the window. Let it blow out the window. Open your window. Just be quiet. That can be the easiest, simplest thing. 20 minutes is nothing. Set your alarm and wake up 20 minutes earlier, I mean. It depends it's in the end, you guys, it depends on how passionate you are about change. It really does. If you want something, it can happen. You can find that 20 minutes. I talk to companies all the time of turning their hour meetings to 50 minutes. You can get just as much done in 50 minutes as an hour. Suggest this to your companies. You have 10 minutes there to go to the bathroom, get a drink, get outside and get some fresh air before you enter into your next meeting. There's 10 minutes of self-care. Yeah, those are some of my suggestions.
That's wonderful. Stephanie just said, love the driving tip. Let it blow out the window is a great visual.
Right? I know.
Especially now that it's nicer weather.
I know. I agree. I have a couple more things to share if there's no more questions. Okay.
That's
So thank
perfect.
you so much, Addie. That's for okay. So the next thing I want you guys to focus on are these questions. I want you to think about these. Okay. And you can take a picture of this if you want. But I'm sorry, that went back. Oh, I'm going backwards. When are you at your best? Like really think about when are you at your best? When are you at your worst? And how do you get to your best place? Like what were the steps that you did to get to your best place? And I'm not saying it has to be, you have to be your best all day, every day. It's impossible. You're going to go, it's like kind of like a roller coaster. Now you decide how the highs and lows are, how big, but it's going to roll. Things are going to roll through the day. And resiliency, we now know, is about how do you handle those rolls. And your fight or flight response will respond to that. If you let things roll off you, your fight or flight response is not going to get activated. It just won't. If you have the tool of pack, okay, I feel this emotion coming. Close my eyes for a minute, notice it, send it compassion and love. Okay, it's not going to go to the height. The rolls are going to be a little lower. What are the steps that led you to your worst place? I ate totally the worst food all day. I drank too much last night. I haven't exercised in 4 days. My mindset has been so negative. I said yes to things I wanted to say no. I spent way too much time and energy with someone that doesn't feel my soul, doesn't make me feel authentic and whole. They're simple things, but very challenging to follow through with in the beginning, right? And then what could you have done to turn that difficult place around? That's a big one. So we're in this difficult place. I lost my patience with my daughter, right? I got frustrated with her. I walked out. I could feel her getting frustrated. She's 12. Before I came on the call, it happened like 5 minutes before the call. I'm like, I'm talking about all this stuff. I better be a good mom. I better pull my act together. I went in there and I apologized. A good apology, not an apology of like, I'm sorry, but I've told you 3 times to clean your room. I just said, I'm sorry. I was frustrated. I'm sorry. She heard it. I turned it around. Now, do I do it every time? No, God, no. You know, it's just that it's the energy to think about these questions and to dive deeper into your life. Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist nun, is another one of my teachers who I adore and read her writings. And she says, we have a choice when we are born onto this planet to awaken or to fall back asleep. I have chosen to awaken. It's not always easy, but that's what these sort of questions are about, like having deeper reflection and curiosity about your life. You know, when are you at your best? When are you at your worst? Okay. This is the last thing. I don't want you to just leave this call and have some tips and tools, and maybe you took a couple pictures. Hopefully you took 1 or 2 things away, because honestly, I know I've done a million of these conferences and speakers, and I remember maybe 1 or 2 things. And usually I remember how they made me feel. Did I like them? Were they energetic? Do I want to follow their work? You know, something like that. So I like to encourage people to carry this forward after this. You go back to your meetings, you go back to, you know, helping your kids, or maybe you're off work after this. I'm not sure where you're going, but I want you to go to a partner, someone in your life you trust, and tell them 2 or 3 things that you're going to do to start integrating into your life, and help them keep you accountable. Help them, have them be your accountability partner. You know, say, hey, check in on me. Do you want to be my running buddy or my walking buddy? Hey, can you make sure that I followed through? I've been meaning to send this email. I've been meaning to finish this project. I've been meaning to sign up for this class. Will you check in on me in a couple days? 9 out of 10 times you will follow through if you have someone that you know is on your team. If not, you won't. It's harder to do. Okay. So these are the things that I want us to carry through and moving forward. And I wanted to end, of course, with another funny thing. It's like how to be in the moment. And then the next book is how to be in the moment after that. We're always learning. We're always striving. Just embrace it, right? Your fight or flight response loves the gray, living in the gray. When we get black and white, that's it. getting our integration off. When you live in the gray, you're in that river. Go with the flow, trust it'll all be okay. Life is for you, not against you. These mantras, this too shall pass. These mantras and these sayings are so helpful. Okay, so just remember that if you're to be in the moment, like if we as therapists have been saying, this is what I've been telling my clients, this is the furthest you can look right now. But I want to plan my summer vacation and what's going to happen and what about my job? And I said, well, you have a job today. You live in Bend, Oregon. If you want to go on a vacation, plan one today. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks. But just be here right now as much as you can. Your fight or flight response will be lower. Your parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system will be more in alignment. And you'll live a healthier life. You'll feel healthier. So that's what I have for you. I know we have, and even though I can't see any of you, I've enjoyed looking at Addie and being with you all. But we do have a few minutes. If anyone has a comment or a suggestion or another question, deeper question about your fight or flight response, about self-care, or the exercise I had you do around PAC, if anything else has come in, please use this time now. That to write in your questions or comments. Or if you have any questions, if any of you are on the call right now and have children and you want to ask a question about your children, I get a lot of those as well too. Like, how do I do this for my kids? How can I, help my children with this? That's also an area that because I was mostly a child therapist, family and children therapist. I'm happy to do that as well. So I don't know if anyone has a question or not.
That's great. I haven't seen any come through since our last ones.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. If you want to unshare your screen, we'll be able to see you full. Perfect.
I'm good. Well, we can, someone said, what are your books called again? Now I can see the chat.
Oh,
my 2 books are called, the first one is Cracking Open. It's a journal for self-transformation. So it's more of a working journal. And I always say, do a question a day and it will change your life. It's a pretty big promise, so we'll see. But it's called Cracking Open. And I lead retreats around this book as well. So I only have 1 retreat tentatively planned now, and it's on the Oregon coast at the Headlands Lodge in the fall. So we'll see if that's going to happen in October. But I've also led retreats in Mexico, Costa Rica, and California. The second book is called Trust Within, Letting Your Intuition Lead. So I wrote a book on intuition. I interviewed people all over the world on listening to their intuition, following their intuition, and how to use intuition as a decision-making skill for yourself and your life. So those are my 2 books. Yeah. And we'll see what the next one, what happens. I don't know what, I think the next one's going to be around human connection and the power of human connection, but we'll see. I haven't started writing it yet. We'll have to say.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
We have a great question about how do we help our kids manage the stress right now?
Okay, I have 2 I have a 12-year-old who's almost 13 and I have a 14-year-old. And I'm reading it. I have teenager advice for kids to be more emotionally smart, mindful, support their emotional needs. The first thing I would say, Stephanie, is for you to start practicing it, to be a model. And I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but the more you practice more mindful lifestyles, more emotionally stable lifestyles, your kids will energetically and visually see it. So if you started getting a small meditation practice, or you set up a little place that was just for you with your favorite things, you started having books around that were more about mindful topics, or crystals, or you could smudge with sage or Palo Santo, all these things that clear out the energy of a house. Just start using even this language with your kids, are more curious. And even as teenagers, the other thing is, when you do an activity, you make it very mindful. So if you're cooking, don't be on the phone, don't be running around doing the dishes too. Like try to just practice it when you're on a hike with your kids or a walk with your kids. Leave your phone in the car. Be and say to them, I want to be mindful. I want to be here with you. And then also notice when they are being mindful. I loved watching how you did that project from start to finish. I love how you put your energy into this situation, this game, this activity and you did it with your whole heart. Even if they're like, Mom, what kind of language? What are you talking about? That is so weird. Who cares? It's going in somewhere. And especially with teenagers, I'm wondering if they game. The gaming is huge, which I understand. You know, a mindful thing to do around that is to set time limits and boundaries. And say, you know, I'm doing this for your own self-worth, for your own good, you know, and things like that. You can use your own language. But to support them emotionally, to just start practicing all these different things, teaching them, noticing, you know, complimenting them. Those are things that are always very helpful with kids. And then just we're humbled all the time when we have teenagers. We're constantly learning what we know and what we don't know. And then they tell us things that they need. Ask them. You know, ask them what would be helpful for you to be more focused or more mindful. What could I do to support that, to give you more peace in your life? They'll tell you. Yeah, I ask my kids these open-ended questions a lot. One last thing I'll say that's really helpful is when your kids are in an emotional situation and they actually come to you, or it's in we call it the back of the car. You're driving in the car, or there's an explosion, and then the emotions come out. They stop. They'll go on, and then you'll see an emotional person. They'll just stop in their response, like they're kind of tired. And the first thing I say to my kids, or any kid that I'm working with, is this: do you want an action or an ear? Meaning, do you want me to actually talk you through this and we kind of brainstorm, or do you want me to just to listen? And 9 out of 10 times, what do you think they say? An ear. They don't want to hear, you know. So that's another tip that I do a lot with my kids that's super helpful, is they usually just say an ear because they feel better because they got it off their chest. You may not feel better because now you're carrying the weight of it, but make sure you don't put it in your backpack. Get your kids' stuff out of your backpack. That's another thing I often tell myself is, or your partners or your friends. You know, it's not your stuff. This will all help with self-care. Yeah.
I think I'm going to use that. Yeah, just with regular, I always wanted to help fix things, and that's not what people need sometimes. So that's such a good, what do you need from me? Not just with kids, but your spouse, or, you know, do you want my help are you ready to brainstorm this, or do you just want to release it?
It's so true. I really realized that as a therapist for 12 years, people just want you to listen. They'll ask you for your advice. Like, what would you do in this situation? You know, how would you handle it? Do you have any suggestions? If not, they just want to get it out of their backpack. They want to get it out too. And it lightens the load. And usually when you say, I'm so proud of you, I'm so sorry you went through that, God, seems like you handled that so well, it's the best responses. Yeah. It's about connecting, not fixing.
That's a good quote. Well, thank you so much, Molly. We don't have any other questions, and it looks like we're right at the end of our time.
Great.
So thank you so much for being here. And everyone, so we had lots of links that were put in the chat, but we will send those out in an email as well.
Great.
So we'll send Molly's website and her books, and stay in touch, because a retreat with you sounds amazing.
They are great. They are interesting. We do a lot of amazing work. They're called Cracking Open. So they're always in beautiful places, and you do yoga and all that too. But I wanted people to walk away feeling a little bit lighter, and not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. So yes. Well, thank you everyone for coming. It was a joy to meet you all. And Addie, thank you for all the support. What an awesome organization.
So great. Thanks for your time.
Thank
you everyone for showing up. Yep. I love the comments too.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. And I'm very accessible. I live in Bend. You can email me if you have any questions. You can reach out to me. And so, I love being part of this community, and however I can support people, I do. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're so lucky to have you.
Thanks, Addie. We'll talk to you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.